So, as usual, let's begin with some prayers, and then we'll do a little bit of meditation to settle down our minds, generate a positive motivation for what we're doing here tonight. So the prayers could be put up on the screen. And while reciting the prayers, it's good if you can to imagine the Buddha in front of you. And think that this image of the Buddha represents all enlightened beings, all Buddhas, and all other objects of refuge, all of your spiritual teachers. So all the positive qualities of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha embodied in this one figure of Shakyamuni Buddha, made of light, pure, transparent, radiant. And really from the depths of your heart, feel that you are taking refuge in the Buddha, his teachings, the Dharma, and the Sangha, those who are sincerely dedicating themselves to following these teachings, following the path. And the reason for relying on the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha is to be of benefit to others ourselves, to transform ourselves into someone who can benefit others, not harm them, and help them in their spiritual practice as well, in whatever way is most skillful and meaningful. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginning this time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence, and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryataya. And let's recite the mantra of the Buddha 7 times together. And while reciting the mantra, visualize light flowing from the Buddha. The light represents his qualities, his wisdom, compassion, love, and all the other enlightened qualities. And imagine the light flowing into you and completely filling your body and mind. And it purifies all negative aspects of your body and mind, like negative karma, afflictions, as well as sickness, any kind of physical problems. Imagine all of these getting purified. And the light also nourishes our positive qualities, our positive potential, our qualities like love and compassion and wisdom and so on, so they can grow more and more, eventually becoming qualities of an enlightened mind. Tayata Om Mune Mune Maha Munaye Soha. 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 So really feel that the light from the Buddha has completely purified your mind and your body of all that is negative, and your mind is blessed to be able to attain all the positive qualities, leading you to the state of enlightenment, and in the meantime, enabling you to be of greater and greater benefit to others and to the world. And then just take a few more moments on your own to really make sure that your motivation for joining this class is an altruistic one. If you are comfortable with Bodhichitta, the aspiration to become a fully enlightened Buddha, to be able to help all living beings, then you can bring that into your mind, recall that motivation. But if you're not yet sure if that's what you want to do or that you're able to do that, then just generate whatever kind of altruistic attitude you are comfortable with, feeling the wish to be of as much benefit to others, other beings as possible in your life. And of course, benefiting yourself as well, because when we engage in learning and practicing the Dharma, we ourselves benefit. It's just natural. Our mind becomes more calm and peaceful, more positive, fewer disturbing thoughts and emotions. Of course, it takes time for that to happen. It's not like an overnight instant change, but gradually over time, we definitely see positive effects on ourselves in learning and practicing the Dharma. So really try to feel that wish to benefit yourselves and as many other people and beings as possible. Okay, so this is only the second class in this series of classes on the 70 topics. So last week I began by giving the background to this text, what the 70 topics are all about, and how they are the main topics explained in the text by Maitreya, called Ornament for Clear Realizations, or Abhisamayalankara. It's one of the most important texts in the Nalanda tradition, the tradition of the great Indian masters explaining the Buddha's teachings. And so I gave some background to that text and then an overview of the text, which has 8 chapters, each chapter covering a different, what are called category, or also we could say clear realizations. So basically the text is explaining the Bodhisattva's path, what a Bodhisattva needs to do, mainly the kind of realizations they need to develop in their minds in order to progress on the path leading to full enlightenment, Buddhahood. And last week, towards the end of the class, I showed a chart of the 5 paths, path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, path of no more learning. So those are like the 5 stages that a bodhisattva goes through on their way to enlightenment, but also hearers and solitary realizers have 5 paths, 5 stages in their process of attaining nirvana. And one of the topics that comes up in talking about the 5 paths is the obscurations. These are factors within our mind that need to be cleared away, need to be eliminated in order to make progress on the path and eventually reach our goal. And I wanted to give a bit more explanation tonight about these obscurations, because the school that this text is explained according to is the Yogacara Svatantrika Madhyamika school. And they have quite a unique way of explaining the obscurations and also the paths of the 3 vehicles. So I want to explain that first. So whoever's putting up the slides, if you could put those on the screen. Okay. So obscurations, and YSM stands for Yogacara Svatantrika Madhyamika. Long name, so just to abbreviate it. So again, there's 2 kinds of obscurations. The first one is called Afflictive Obscurations, or AO for short. And according to this school, this mainly includes ignorance, the ignorance that conceives of a self-sufficient, substantially existent self or person. So this is a conception that everybody has. It's inborn, innate, even animals and insects and babies, any being that has a mind, it isn't, an enlightened being. We all have this conception in our mind. So it's inborn, innate. And it views our own self, our own being, and believes that there is a certain type of self which has these qualities of being self-sufficient, substantially existent, which is a mouthful of words and probably doesn't make a lot of sense to you, but it's described as a sense of an I, a me, that seems to be like someone in charge, like a boss or a ruler, a CEO. Okay, so there seems to be an I somewhere inside of us that owns our body and mind. It's like the owner of the body and the mind, and also controls our body and mind, controls our life and our actions. So that sense of a controlling I, or ego, if you want to call it, that's the meaning of this conception, and it's a type of ignorance. So that's the main afflictive obscuration, and the afflictive obscurations are the ones that keep us in samsara and prevent us from getting free of samsara and attaining nirvana, liberation. So this is the main thing that binds us to the wheel of life, having to die and be reborn again and again and again. And so that's the main thing that needs to be overcome, to be eliminated in order to be free of samsara. And in addition to that, there are other afflictions like anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, and so forth, that arise from this ignorance, as well as seeds. So the term seed, you shouldn't think of it like a physical seed, like a barley seed or a tomato seed that will grow into a plant. It's not something physical, it's something subtle that is left in our mind when we have states of afflictions, when we get angry, for example, or ignorance. You know, when ignorance manifests in our mind, it leaves a seed, it plants a seed in our mind that will give rise to another experience of the same type later on. So in addition to getting rid of ignorance and the other afflictions, we also have to get rid of the seeds. So those afflictive states of mind don't grow anymore. So those are the afflictive obscurations. And then there's the second kind of obscuration are called knowledge obscurations. Other translations are obscurations to omniscience, or some translated as cognitive obscurations. So KOs for short. Okay, so this school says there are two kinds of knowledge obscurations. There's a coarse one and a subtle one. So the coarse one is the conception of subject and object being of different natures or entities, along with its seeds. So this conception, I spoke a little bit last week about how this school is similar to Cheetah Matra or mind-only school, because they believe that there are no external objects. External objects means objects that we perceive that exist out there, separate from our mind, independent of our mind. And that's how things appear to us. That's how things seem to be, but that's wrong. That's an illusion. And in reality, the objects that we perceive, for example, a flower, when we see a flower, although the flower looks like it's sitting out there, just waiting for us to come along and see it and smell it and touch it. But the flower that appears to our visual consciousness or any of our consciousnesses actually comes from an imprint in our mind, or a seed, kind of like a seed or an imprint that's stored in our mind, left from previous actions, previous experiences. So what happens when we see a flower is the seed ripens and produces both the appearance of the flower as well as the consciousness, like an eye consciousness, that's perceiving the flower. Okay, so that's what actually happens with all the things that we perceive, visual objects, sounds, smells, tastes, and so on. So everything we perceive is actually kind of a projection, you might say, of some seed in our mind. And so the object, like the flower, and the subject, the mind that's perceiving it, both of those two things arise together simultaneously from the same seed in the mind. And because the object and subject arise together, they are of one nature or one entity. And when it said that two things are of this one nature or the same nature, that means they arise together, they abide together, and they cease together. And they can't be separated. So it doesn't mean they're the same. They are two different things, but they have that kind of strong relationship of arising together, abiding together, ceasing together. So, for example, with a flower, when we see a flower, the flower that we see, as well as the mind, the subject seeing it, are of the same nature or the same entity, because they arise from the same cause, the same seed. So that's the reality of things. However, ordinary beings don't realize that, don't understand that. And instead, we think that the object and the subject perceiving it are completely separate and cut off and unrelated and not of the same nature. So that's the meaning of this conception, the conception of subject and object being of different natures or different entities. Okay, so this is, according to them, a coarse obscuration to omniscience, coarse knowledge obscuration or cognitive obscuration, and also the seeds of that conception that are left in the mind. And then the subtle knowledge obscurations are the conception of true existence along with its seeds. Okay, so this is a more subtle kind of wrong conception that sees things as truly existing. And a little bit later, I will explain what this school means by true existence. So they reject or refute true existence. They say true existence is false. It's kind of funny to say it's true existence, but it's actually false. It's wrong. But that's the term they use. And I will explain it a little bit later. But that they say that is the most subtle misconception that we have, or wrong conception that we have, that needs to be eliminated, needs to be cleared away from our mind, along with its seeds, in order to for our mind to become a Buddha's mind, fully enlightened mind. And so those are the obscurations. And then down at the bottom, it says there are both acquired. Acquired means learned, like from our teachers or whatever. Like if you study a certain philosophical system that teaches these wrong conceptions, then on top of the innate ones, if there's an innate one, you have additional ones that are acquired. And then innate or inborn, that's what we are born with, what we bring with us from past lives. So there's an acquired and an innate form of both of these obscurations, afflictive obscurations and knowledge obscurations. And I'm sure about that with regard to at least the subtle type of knowledge obscurations. I didn't see any material about acquired forms of the coarse obscurations. My guess is there probably are, but I'll try to find out for sure. Okay, so when a person is progressing along the path, when they reach the path of seeing, the third path, that's the point at which they attain a direct realization of selflessness or emptiness. That's the time when the acquired level of obscurations are eliminated. They're all cleared away in one go. Then from then on, one continues to meditate on selflessness or emptiness and gradually eliminate the innate obscurations. afflictive and knowledge obscurations. Okay, so those are the obscurations. And then, so just go back a minute. So prasangika has a different explanation. They don't have coarse knowledge obscurations. They only have knowledge obscurations. And just in brief, according to prasangika, the afflictive obscurations are include mainly the conception of inherent existence, believing there's an inherently existing I and everyone and everything else. So seeing all things, all phenomena as inherently existing. So they say that's the main afflictive obscuration that needs to be eliminated in order to attain either nirvana or enlightenment, whatever it is you're trying to attain. So that means that to get out of samsara, to free yourself from samsara, it's not enough just to eliminate this more coarse type of ignorance about a self-sufficient, substantially existent self. So we do have to overcome that one, but just by overcoming that one, you will not be able to attain liberation from samsara. You have to eliminate the deepest, most subtle ignorance of inherent existence. Anyway, so there, like I said, there are differences in the different schools about what are the obscurations that need to be eliminated in order to attain both liberation, freedom from samsara, as well as enlightenment. But yeah, this school has its own unique way of explaining the obscurations. And then the next slide shows another unique explanation of this school. And that is how practitioners of the three vehicles practice in order to attain their respective goals. So the three vehicles, so a vehicle, the term vehicle, if I remember correctly, that itself refers to a state of mind, a realization. Okay, so a vehicle is actually a realization. And so the first of the three vehicles is the hearers, the vehicle of the hearers, and these are practitioners who listen to the Buddhist teachings and generate the wish to attain nirvana, liberation, freeing themselves from samsara. And so in order to attain their goal, their main object of cultivation or meditation, the main thing they meditate on is the subtle selflessness of persons. And that refers to the emptiness of a self-supporting, substantially existent self. So again, that's the sense of an I who's in charge, the boss. Okay, so they meditate on the emptiness of that and gain a realization of that kind of emptiness. And so that's what they meditate on. That's their main object of meditation. And then the next column is the main object of abandonment. So what it is they are abandoning or eliminating is that conception, that wrong conception of a self-supporting, substantially existent self, which again is afflictive, the afflictive obscuration. So they're mainly trying to eliminate the afflictive obscurations, because those are the things that keep us in samsara. They have to be overcome to be free of samsara. And then the last column is what is their object of attainment? And they attain what's called hearer's enlightenment. So hearer's enlightenment, that's a term used in the text, but it's nirvana, a type of nirvana or liberation that hearers attain. And then the second vehicle is the vehicle of solitary realizers. So these are also practitioners who learn the Buddhist teachings and aspire to attain nirvana, but they have a somewhat different way of practicing. So their main object of cultivation or meditation, here I put non-duality, and that means non-duality of subject and object. So that's talking about, this is the opposite of the conception that subject and object are different entities or different natures. Okay, so we have that wrong conception, thinking there's external objects and perceivers are, completely different and unrelated. So there's that wrong conception, and they are trying to overcome that. So they meditate on non-duality, meaning that subject and object are not different entities. They are one entity, one nature. So that's their main object of meditation. And then their object of abandonment is the conception of duality, conception of subject and object being of different natures or different entities, which is the coarse kind of knowledge obscuration. Okay, so that's going back to the previous slide, the coarse level of the knowledge obscuration. So the solitary realizers overcome those, eliminate those by meditating on non-duality. And as a result, they attain the solitary realizer's enlightenment. So again, it's nirvana, but a somewhat maybe more advanced type of nirvana than the hearers, because they have eliminated a more subtle kind of obscuration in their mind. The hearers have not. So the hearers don't eliminate that wrong conception of subject and object being of different natures. And then the third type of practitioner are the Bodhisattvas. This is the Mahayana vehicle. And so their main object of cultivation or meditation is emptiness of true existence. So that's the most subtle level of emptiness of true existence. And what they overcome or abandon, their main object of abandonment, is the conception of true existence, seeing everything as truly existing. And again, that's the subtle type of knowledge obscuration. So they abandon that. But they also have to meditate on the other topics, the other topics of meditation. They also have to meditate on the first one, the hearer's one, subtle selflessness of persons. They do meditate on that, and they eliminate the afflictive obscurations. They also meditate on non-duality, the solitary realizer's object of meditation, and they eliminate the conception of duality, the coarse knowledge obscurations. But their main practice is meditating on the emptiness of true existence and realizing that kind of emptiness. And then they eliminate the subtle knowledge obscurations. And then the goal, the final object of attainment, is full, complete enlightenment or Buddhahood. So that's the enlightenment that the Buddha himself achieved. Okay, so this is a little complicated, but it is part of the study of the Ornament. And yeah, when you go through the Ornament, this comes up again and again, how these three types of persons, practitioners, have three main objects of meditation that they meditate on, as well as three different levels of objects that they are abandoning, overcoming, and three different goals that they attain. And there's also differences in the amount of time they spend on their path. So the hearers accumulate merit for, it says, around 3 lifetimes or more. That's kind of the minimum. So they spend 3 lifetimes accumulating merit and meditating on to cultivate their own type of wisdom in order to attain their goal. Here is enlightenment. Solitary realizers spend around 100 eons practicing, accumulating merit and meditating on their main objects of meditation in order to attain their goal of solitary realizers enlightenment. And Bodhisattvas, you've probably heard, spend at least 3 countless great eons following their path, accumulating merit and developing their wisdom, and finally achieving full enlightenment, Buddhahood. And so because of the amount of time that is spent on the path, the different practitioners will attain higher, more superior levels of realization and ability to be of benefit to others. Any questions about this so far?
The slide before this, you have at the bottom NB. What does that stand for?
Oh, I don't know. What is it? Nota bene? It's just a Latin thing.
Gotcha. Okay.
Just like
yeah.
note.
Yeah, gotcha.
Take note of this.
Thank you.
Is there any, do you know of any distinction between the type of nirvana that hearers attain and solitary realizers attain?
Yeah. It is said that they do attain a superior type of enlightenment. And I did look up some information, but I didn't have time to put it together today, so I can bring that up next time. Yeah, there are certain distinctions, things that they are able to do that hearers are not able to do.
Did you already say what their definition of true existence is?
That's coming.
Okay.
Next slide.
Great.
Okay, so the next slide. Next page. Okay, so again, this term true existence may be used by different schools of tenets, but the way they understand it or explain it would be different. So according to this school, the Yogacara Svatantrika Madhyamaka, so the first bullet point says the measure of true existence. So in actual fact, true existence doesn't exist. It's actually a false mode of existence. And yet we do see things as if they were truly existing. So even though it doesn't exist, it does appear to us. We do see things as if they were truly existing. So what is that mode of existence that's called true existence? So this is kind of a technical explanation, then I'll put it into simple words. So it's the existence of an object by way of its own uncommon mode of subsistence without being posited through the force of appearing to a non-defective awareness. So what that means is that to ordinary beings, those who haven't realized emptiness, everything appears as if it exists with its own uncommon or objective way of existing. So it seems to exist completely from its own side, independent of the mind, not depending at all on the mind. And even though this way of existing doesn't exist, we do see things as if that they existed that way because of this innate conception that's been in our mind from beginningless time. It's always been there. We've never been free of it. And so we've always seen things in this way, and most beings never question it. They just go along with it, buy into it. So the term non-defective awareness in there, the end of that sentence, it means it could be either a conceptual consciousness or a non-conceptual consciousness. So it could be conceptual, or it could be like direct perception, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and so on. So just a consciousness that's not wrong or incorrect. So according to this school, and I think it's also true for the other type of Svatantrika Madhyamaka, the Sutrantika Svatantrika Madhyamaka, the way that things do exist, for example, a table, we probably all have tables nearby that we can look at. So the way the table exists is the conventional mode of existence. There are two factors that need to be present. The one factor is that the object does have its own objective mode of existence. You know, there are certain features, certain qualities in the object from the side of the object. But that's not enough. Just that alone isn't enough for the table to exist conventionally. There needs to be something coming from the mind. So that mode of existence of the object, the table, has to appear to a mind, a non-defective awareness. Okay, not a wrong mind, but a correct mind. And then that mind will posit or impute table onto the object. So those two things need to come together in order to say there is a table, conventionally existing table. So one of my teachers said, it's like two halves of an egg or two halves of a ball. Okay, so the two halves have to come together in order to make the whole. Something like that. So that's how things do exist conventionally. But if we were to think that the table has its own way of existing, on its own, completely independent of appearing to the mind and being posited by the mind, just totally from its own side, that mode of existing is false. And that's the meaning of true existence. That's actually the meaning of true existence. If we say the table is completely independent of the mind, it has its own qualities, features, characteristics, objective way of existing, regardless of anybody's mind, seeing it and imputing it and so on. That's the meaning of true existence. And that kind of conception is the conception of permanence or absolutism or reification. There's different terms for that. That's one of the two extremes. Extreme of permanence. On the other hand, if one were to think that objects exist merely through the force of an awareness and don't have their own uncommon objective mode of existence, that's also incorrect. That would be the extreme of nihilism or annihilation, what you call it. And so I think from their point of view, what the prasangikas are saying, that there's nothing in the object. The object doesn't have any characteristics or mode of existence from its own side objectively. It's all just imputed by the mind, posited by the mind. So this school would say that's nihilism. You're falling into nihilism. There has to be something coming from the side of the object. Otherwise, the object is just non-existent and a mere mental construction. So they say there's something from the side of the object, something from the side of the mind. Those two things coming together make the conventional existence of the object. And so this way of explaining things, according to them, is how they avoid the two extremes, the extreme of permanence on one hand, the extreme of nihilism on the other. And so mainly in this text, they use the term true existence. And down at the bottom, the last bullet point has synonyms of true existence: ultimate existence and existence as its own reality. but I think the first two are the main ones that they use. So when this school is talking about the object of negation, the object that needs to be negated to realize emptiness, they use the term true existence or ultimate existence, but not inherent existence. So it's the prasangikas who use that term, inherent existence, and have their unique way of explaining it. So you have to be careful which terms you use. In talking about this school, you wouldn't say that their object of negation is inherent existence. They do refute inherent existence on the ultimate level. They say ultimately things don't have inherent existence, but conventionally they do. So they actually affirm inherent existence on the conventional level, but refute it on the ultimate level. But from the prasangika point of view, that's nuts. You can't say that inherent existence exists conventionally, but not ultimately. Yeah, so they have their arguments about that. But anyway, so for this school, better to use the terms true existence and ultimate existence. Those are the things that they refute. And this is what it means to exist truly or ultimately. Any questions about that? Not that I've been able to answer them. But
So they refute true existence conventionally.
no, ultimately, yeah.
Only ultimately.
This school?
Yeah, this school.
No, they refute it across the board.
So they refute
Yeah.
true existence both conventionally and ultimately.
Yeah.
And it's the
Yeah.
inherent existence.
Inherent
the
existence is what they don't refute
conventional.
conventionally. Yeah. All these different terms, it can be quite a
I have
Mind.
another question.
yeah.
So the Yogacaras talk about the two types of subtle selflessness of phenomena.
Yeah.
Do they also assert the second kind?
This school?
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't recall it coming up in the ornament. It didn't, I don't think it came up in the ornament, but that doesn't mean they don't. It just may not be emphasized. There's a book called Study of Svatantrika by Lopez, Donald Lopez. Yeah. So he really goes into the Svatantrika tenets in great depth and detail. So you might find it in there. But yeah, I think in the ornament, because it's, the intended audience are bodhisattvas, and the main object of meditation for bodhisattvas is emptiness of true existence. So that's the one that's mainly mentioned in the ornament. But it's also not the most, it comes up again and again, but not in the same way as in Nagarjuna's texts or Chandrakirti's texts, because the ornament is mainly talking about the method side of the path, the bodhisattva's path, not so much the wisdom side of the path, but it is definitely there. Okay, so yeah, that's just kind of some more background information about this school. And then tonight I wanted to go into more detail with the first of the 70 topics. So again, this is in chapter 1. Chapter 1 is explaining the exalted knower of all aspects, the first of the 3 exalted knowers. And that is another term for omniscient mind, enlightened mind, Buddha's mind. And then there are 10 topics in chapter 1. And like I said last week, that's the biggest chapter in the book. It's just full of wonderful information. And the very first of the 10 topics in chapter 1 is, it's called generated mind, which is another term for bodhicitta. So you can go to the next slide. So generated mind is Sangye in Tibetan. And I'm kind of curious about where the term bodhicitta comes from, because this text always uses that term, generated mind, Sangye, instead of bodhicitta. So I haven't done extensive research into this, but I just, in the Lam Rim, in most of our studies, like in the Lam Rim and Lojong and so on, they use the term bodhicitta. However, in this text, which is meant to be the source for the Lam Rim, they use this other term, generated mind. Anyway, so the first verse of chapter 1 gives a kind of, I don't know if it's really a definition, but it's an explanation of what the generated mind is. So it's the words in red. The generated mind is desire for perfect, complete enlightenment for others' welfare. And so that half of a verse is often quoted, for example, in Lama Tsongkhapa's Lam Rim Chenmo and other books, as the source for the explanation of what is bodhicitta. So I'm going to kind of switch back and forth. Sometimes I'll use the term bodhicitta, sometimes I'll use the term generated mind. So just know that they're the same thing, just different terms for them. And he uses the term desire, which can be a little surprising, because we tend to think of desire as something negative, like an affliction, like another term for attachment. However, the word desire isn't always negative. It can be, it's also used, for example, the desire for enlightenment or the desire for liberation. Okay, so it depends on what it is we have desire for. If we desire a boyfriend or ice cream, then that's a samsaric mind. But desire for liberation, desire for enlightenment is something positive and constructive. And even though he uses the word desire, it really refers to another mental factor that's usually translated as aspiration, having aspiration. And so it's said that there are two kinds of desires or aspirations that are necessary for bodhicitta, to have this mind of bodhicitta. The first is aspiration for others' welfare. So that comes about by mainly cultivating compassion. Compassion is the most important factor leading to bodhicitta. So recognizing, first, of course, we have to recognize samsara, our own samsara, how we are stuck in this situation of being under the control of afflictions and karma, dying and being reborn again and again and again, having to go through all these painful experiences and so on. So we have to understand samsara, its faults, its disadvantages, and generate this strong determination to get out of it, to free ourselves from it. And then looking at other sentient beings, recognizing that they are stuck in samsara too. They're in the same situation, under the control of karma and afflictions, having to die and be reborn again and again and go through all these sufferings. So that gives rise to compassion. Having the determination to be free of samsara for oneself is like compassion for oneself, self-compassion, like somebody brought up last week. But then a bodhisattva will extend that to others and realize they want to be free of suffering just as much as I do, and I want to help them. And in the process of developing bodhicitta, you contemplate how others have been kind to us. One of the methods for generating bodhicitta involves thinking how everybody has been my mother and my father. Buddha has said that. He himself said those words, that everyone has been our mother and our father, as well as our child and our brother and our sister and our friend, and all of our happiness, all the needs and pleasant experiences and everything that we have comes from others. So without others, we wouldn't be even be alive, much less have any enjoyments. And also for spiritual practice, we need others as the objects, the recipients of our spiritual practice, to practice generosity, ethics, patience, cultivate love, kindness, compassion, and so on. So one contemplates this dependence on others or interdependence with others, plus how others are suffering in samsara. And this gives rise to a strong sense of compassion and the wish to help others, or the aspiration for others' welfare. So that's the first of the two types of aspiration. And that's said to be a causal aspiration. That's the cause of bodhicitta. Okay, so that precedes bodhicitta. So we have to have this strong wish to relieve the suffering of others. And then look for how to do that, how to fulfill that wish. And we come to realize that there's only one way to really help all sentient beings, and that is by becoming a Buddha. Only a Buddha, a fully enlightened being, has all the abilities, the qualities, whatever it takes to be able to help sentient beings become free of samsara and help them attain nirvana and enlightenment and so on. So, you know, one needs to know very well the qualities of a Buddha, like the 4 Bodhikayas and all the other abilities that a Buddha has. And then you realize, okay, that's what I need to do in order to fulfill this wish to help others. I need to become enlightened. So that's the second aspiration, attaining perfect, complete enlightenment in order to benefit others. So that second type of aspiration is said to be the companion of bodhicitta. It's together with bodhicitta. So the first one is causal, gives rise to bodhicitta. The second type of aspiration is concomitant, is the term used, when there's a main mind and a mental factor together at the same time. We say they are concomitant, because bodhicitta is actually not a mental factor, but a main mind or a primary mind, a mental consciousness, a primary mental consciousness. I never heard an explanation as to why that is the case, but everybody says it. Has Venerable ever said anything? They don't seem to give a reason for it. They just say that's how it is. Bodhicitta is a primary mind, and then it's accompanied by, well, probably many mental factors, but one of the main mental factors is this, the second one, aspiration for complete enlightenment. And there's actually a debate about these two desires or aspirations. Do they both accompany bodhicitta? Are both of them present together with bodhicitta? Or is the first one just the cause and the second one is just accompanying it? And apparently there are different opinions. So some lamas say yes, both of these two aspirations are there in the mind together with bodhicitta, concomitant with bodhicitta. But others say no, only the second one is present with bodhicitta. The first one is just causal. But I don't know all the details of that debate. They have their reasons for why they say what they say. They probably go into great detail and get very excited and have very lively debates about it. But anyway, it's a point of debate. And so these two lines from Maitreya's text, Ornament for Clear Realization, is just a very short explanation of generated mind. And then Jetsun Chukyi Gyaltsen's text, for example, 70 Topics, his text on the 70 Topics gives a much more detailed definition. So let's look at that. It's on the next slide. So this is his definition of the Mahayana conventional. Oops, here it has mind generation. That's another way of translating generated mind. So I forgot to change that. Generated mind. Okay. So I put different colors because there's different parts of the definition that have different meanings. So it's a Mahayana special main mental knower that arises concomitant with an assisting aspiration, observing complete enlightenment for others' welfare, and is distinguished by abiding in a class of paths that serves as the door of entry into Mahayana paths. So it's a lot of words there, and but apparently this is just a very precise definition that would hold up on the debate ground. Because if you just gave those 2 lines from Maitreya's text, you might get smashed in a debate. So they really try to, make sure that definitions are very precise. So the first term, Mahayana, saying that it's Mahayana, this eliminates contrived bodhicitta. So remember, before you have uncontrived, spontaneous bodhicitta, you have contrived bodhicitta. And that's when you have to make effort to generate that state of mind. But it's not spontaneous and naturally arising. And so that kind of bodhicitta, contrived bodhicitta, isn't genuine bodhicitta. It's more like fake it till you make it. I mean, it's certainly good. It's a very good state of mind. But bodhicitta really is the uncontrived, natural, spontaneous, effortless bodhicitta. So putting the term Mahayana there eliminates contrived bodhicitta, because if you still have just contrived bodhicitta, you haven't really entered the Mahayana path. You only enter the Mahayana path and become a Mahayana path person by developing uncontrived bodhicitta or generated mind. And then the next few words in green, special main mental knower. So this means it's a main mind rather than a mental factor. It's a primary mind, a main mind, and it's a mental knower. Knower is just another term for mind. And it's special because it's one of the principal states of mind that we need to attain enlightenment. We have lots of main minds, but most of them probably don't help us reach enlightenment. Maybe many of them help us stay in samsara if they are involved with attachment and anger and so forth. So this is a very special main mind. And then the part in blue is talking about this aspiration. Okay, so it arises, concomitant means together with an assisting aspiration, observing complete enlightenment for others' welfare. So that's talking about the aspiration that is together with bodhicitta, looking at enlightenment, wanting to achieve enlightenment to be able to benefit others. And then the last phrase that's in kind of orange, abiding in a class of paths that serves as the door of entry into Mahayana paths. So bodhicitta is called the door of entry into the Mahayana path, because it's when you generate uncontrived, spontaneous bodhicitta, that's when you're through the door, you're in the door, you're on the path. Officially, you are part of the Mahayana path. And it said that when you have your first experience of uncontrived bodhicitta or generated mind, that's the point at which you attain the small level of the path of accumulation. That's the very first level of that path. And then later, as you continue on the path, you continue having this mind of bodhicitta, generated mind. In fact, it's said that A bodhisattva is never without bodhicitta. In the mind of a bodhisattva, there's always some kind of bodhicitta. Even, I guess, even when they're asleep. Bodhisattva's mind is always has bodhicitta. But we'll have a little bit more about that later. So the bodhicittas that a bodhisattva has later in the path are not the door of entry to the Mahayana path. It's only that first mind, initial experience of uncontrived bodhicitta, that's the door of entry. But we can still say that those other levels of bodhicitta that they have later on the later paths, they are still in the class of paths. There's still that same type of mind that is the door of entry to the Mahayana path. So that's the meaning of all those words at the last part of the definition. So don't worry, you don't have to memorize this unless you want to, but just, this definition gives more information about what is bodhicitta, what is the generated mind. So the next slide is, so there's a lot of information about bodhicitta in the ornament that isn't found in other texts that I have come across. So for example, this one, who can generate bodhicitta? What kind of person, what kind of being can generate bodhicitta? And so it talks about two aspects of a being. One is the body, the kind of body you have, they call it body support. And this is any of the 6 types of migrators. It's interesting. So the 6 types of migrators are hell beings, hungry ghosts, animals, humans, asuras, and devas. So according to this text, any of those beings is able to generate bodhicitta. And you may have heard it said, they talk about the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, and that when he first generated bodhicitta, he was in hell. He was a hell being. And there was some story about him having to pull some big heavy cart. And there was a companion. Both of them were pulling this big heavy cart, and there was some kind of hell being that was beating them. And the Buddha, well, he wasn't Buddha then, but this Buddha to be, felt compassion for his companion, and he asked, can I carry this by myself and let this person go? So he had that compassion for this other being. And then I think the story was he died, and maybe the hell guardian hit him over the head or something, and then he died and he was out of hell. A great thought of compassion that he had, and enabled him to escape from hell. So they do say that was the first time he generated bodhicitta, but apparently there's debate about that as well. Some say he didn't really generate bodhicitta at that point in time. He generated great compassion. Yeah. Because kind of hard to really generate bodhicitta in the hell realm. Because the second point is the mind support, the kind of mind you need to have to generate bodhicitta. And it said that it has to be either a preparation of a concentration, i.e., at least calm abiding, or an actual concentration. So you're probably familiar with calm abiding. This is where you train your mind to stay focused on an object for longer and longer periods of time. And eventually you get to where you can stay focused on your object of meditation for at least 4 hours without getting tired or restless or having any faults. And so that's the point at which you have calm abiding, and there's physical and mental bliss and pliancy and so on and so forth. So it's a very high level of concentration. And then on top of that, after developing calm abiding, you can go on to develop concentrations or jhanas. I think it's the Pali word jhana in Sanskrit. So there are 4 concentrations. These are higher levels of mental stability, concentration. This is a whole complicated explanation of how you do this. But anyway, it said that to develop bodhicitta, you need to have at least a preparation. That's like a step towards a concentration. There's 7 preparations. The first one is calm abiding. So that's like the first step towards developing a concentration. So you have to at least have attained that, or an actual concentration. So that's a very high level of mind. And if that's what you need to be able to develop bodhicitta, then how is it possible for an animal or a hungry ghost or someone in the hell to be able to have that kind of mind? So I think that's, again, a topic of debate, especially with regard to this story about the Buddha. And so those who say that the Buddha did generate bodhicitta when he was in hell, that he must have had developed a preparation of a concentration in a past life and was still had it in this lifetime, which is possible because, we do hear stories about people, human beings, for example, in this world, who very easily, very quickly develop concentration, calm abiding, jhanas. And some have clairvoyance. They're able to see other people's minds or see things far away that, they shouldn't be able to see. So there are people who have these kind of abilities. And it's possible that, they developed concentration, very high concentration in their past life. And they have, the continuation of that mind even in this lifetime. So it's possible that Buddha was in hell and he still had this powerful mind from a previous life, and on the basis of that was able to generate bodhicitta. But anyway, I guess what we can learn from this is that we do need to develop concentration. We do need to work on calm abiding. If we want to develop bodhicitta, we have to have that as a basis. Okay, then there's some different ways of dividing bodhicitta. The next slide, wishing and engaging bodhicitta. You probably encountered these terms before. So wishing bodhicitta or generated mind is the mind wishing to become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And so that is compared to having the interest to go someplace, to make a journey to some destination like Tibet or India. So you're at home and you hear about this wonderful place and you generate this wish. I want to go there. I want to have that experience of being in that place. But you're not yet doing anything about it. You're just dreaming, maybe looking at travel brochures and so on. And then the second type of bodhicitta is engaging. Again, I put the wrong letters. It should be GM, generated mind, engaging generated mind. So in general, this is the type of bodhicitta that you have when you're engaging in bodhisattva deeds, when you're actually doing something. Just like if you finally decide to make that journey and go to that destination, then you start planning, buying your air ticket and getting your visa and packing your bags and so on. So you're actually involved in doing what you need to do to get to your destination. And so for the bodhisattva, when they go beyond just wishing to reach enlightenment and they start doing the practices, which are mainly the 6 perfections, giving, ethics, and so on, and they're actually engaged in those practices, the bodhicitta they have at that time is the second one, engaging bodhicitta. So when you first generate bodhicitta, the third bullet point, when one first generates bodhicitta, it's wishing bodhicitta. And then when we start engaging in the bodhisattva deeds, then we have engaging bodhicitta. And what it said in the Ornament and its commentaries, the last bullet point, these two types of bodhicitta are mutually exclusive. They are not the same. They're not the same thing. And they also cannot both be in the mind at the same time. Only one of these can be in the mind at the same time. But they are part of a single stream or continuity of, again, I use the, I was rushing today. It should be generated mind or bodhicitta. So from the time that one becomes a bodhisattva, having generated spontaneous, uncontrived bodhicitta, from that time on, a bodhisattva always has bodhicitta in their mind. And it's either wishing bodhicitta or engaging bodhicitta. One of those two types of bodhicitta is always there in their mind. And the next slide has a bit more about engaging bodhicitta, because it's a little bit complicated how that works. And so this is from the commentaries to the Ornament. First bullet point says, a bodhisattva has engaging bodhicitta when two things are manifest. The first one is bodhicitta or generated mind. So that's manifest. And the meaning of manifest, our teacher said, is that the person is directly thinking about it. It's kind of on the surface of their mind rather than unconscious or subliminal or, deeper down in the mind. So it's on the conscious level, the surface of their mind. So bodhicitta is manifest. And the second thing that's manifest is the bodhisattva is actively practicing bodhisattva's deeds. So they're practicing giving or ethics or a combination. I mean, actually a bodhisattva, when they practice any of the six perfections, they practice all six together. That's actually one of the later topics in chapter 1. It's called Achieving of Armor. And it talks about how when a bodhisattva is practicing giving, at the same time they're practicing ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. And when they're practicing joyous effort, they're also practicing giving and so on. So all six perfections are practiced together in one kind of package. So when a bodhisattva is actively engaging in bodhisattva deeds, like the six perfections, so that's manifest, and their bodhicitta is manifest, not subliminal. That's the meaning of engaging bodhicitta. That's the time when they have engaging bodhicitta. Yeah, so the second bullet points us just an example. When a bodhisattva is practicing giving and both of those two factors are manifest, then her bodhicitta, her generated mind, is engaging generated mind. The reason it sometimes says mind generation is that's the term Jeffrey uses, I think, and I like it. So I was using that for a long time, but then the translator, Sugi, she used generated mind. So I was trying to kind of conform to her, but I still like mind generation. Anyway, just another way of translating the term. But then bullet point number 3, this is a tricky one. But during meditative equipoise on emptiness, generated mind is non-manifest. The reason for that is, so this is talking about, because bodhisattvas, sometimes they sit down and meditate on emptiness. They need to do that. They've already realized emptiness, but they need to continue meditating on emptiness and making their mind more and more familiar with emptiness. And if it's an Arya Bodhisattva and they have a direct realization of emptiness, then when they're meditating on emptiness, the only thing that appears to their mind is emptiness. Nothing else besides emptiness appears. So that means all conventional phenomena, all conventional things are just not appearing to their mind. Sentient beings are not appearing to their mind. Even their own body and mind, their own self isn't appearing to their mind. Nothing except emptiness is appearing to their mind. And so that's why it said that generated mind or bodhicitta is not manifest at that time, because for that to be manifest, the bodhisattva has to be thinking about sentient beings and thinking about enlightenment and wanting to reach enlightenment to help sentient beings. And they're not doing that at that time because those things, none of those things are appearing in their mind. The only thing appearing is emptiness. And so, so when they're in meditative equipoise on emptiness, their bodhicitta goes subliminal, goes underground. This is according to Jetsun Chokyi Gyaltsen, but apparently there are different opinions about this. For example, when Master Panchen Sonam Drakpa, another writer of textbooks, he doesn't agree that there's such a thing as a non-manifest mind. So I don't know how he explains this, but anyway, since my teachers follow Jetsun Chokyi Gyaltsen, that's the method I've learned. So they just say, yeah, bodhicitta goes non-manifest, it goes subliminal. It's still there in the mind, it's still present in the mind, but it's not manifest. It can't be manifest because nothing appears except emptiness. And so when the generated mind, the bodhicitta, becomes non-manifest, it's wishing bodhicitta. Yeah, because in order to have engaging bodhicitta, it has to be manifest. When it's not manifest, it turns into wishing bodhicitta. And so even though this bodhisattva is engaging in the bodhisattva deeds at that moment because they're meditating on emptiness, and that's one of the bodhisattva deeds, it's a sixth perfection. So they are actively engaging in the bodhisattva deeds at that moment. However, because their bodhicitta is not manifest, it can't be engaging bodhicitta. It's wishing bodhicitta. Does that make sense? It's a little tricky. But again, there's probably different points of view, different assertions about this, explanations about this, but this is according to Jetsun Chokyi Gyaltsen. And to me, it's, yeah, sounds good. Makes sense. And then, yeah, so the last bullet point just kind of repeats, engaging bodhicitta must always be manifest. Okay. Whereas wishing bodhicitta can be manifest or non-manifest. Because in the beginning, when you first generate bodhicitta, it's wishing bodhicitta and it's manifest. And then when you start engaging in bodhisattva deeds, practicing giving and ethics and so on and so forth, then you can have engaging bodhicitta. But when engaging bodhicitta has to become non-manifest, like during meditative equipoise, it can no longer be engaging bodhicitta, so it's wishing bodhicitta. So there's always bodhicitta in the mind. Sometimes it's engaging bodhicitta, sometimes it's wishing bodhicitta. So if you don't understand that, don't worry. What you need to understand is that, yeah, there are these two types of bodhicitta we need to cultivate. And so we need to engage in the various meditation practices to cultivate this aspiration to become a Buddha, to benefit all living beings. Okay, so the next point is kind of fun. Does a Buddha have bodhicitta? So again, it seems there are different opinions about this. Different Tibetan scholars and writers of texts will give different opinions about it. It seems that they are unanimous that a Buddha doesn't have wishing bodhicitta. I suppose one reason for that is because wishing bodhicitta is, I want to become enlightened, and they're already there. Okay, so they no longer need to have the wish to become enlightened. But another reason is that a Buddha is always engaged in actively working to help sentient beings. I guess you wouldn't call it bodhisattva deeds anymore. They would be Buddha deeds rather than bodhisattva deeds. But anyway, a Buddha is constantly actively working for sentient beings, helping sentient beings. And so whatever bodhicitta they have would be engaging bodhicitta. However, some scholars say, no, a Buddha doesn't have even engaging bodhicitta. And their reason is because bodhicitta seeks enlightenment, and that's already been attained. Yeah, so they think it just sounds weird to say Buddha has bodhicitta wanting to become enlightened because he's already there, doesn't need bodhicitta anymore. But then on the other hand, it sounds kind of uncomfortable to say Buddha doesn't have bodhicitta. So some scholars in the third bullet point, and this includes Jetsun Chukyi Gelsen, who wrote the text about the 70 topics, they say that a Buddha does have engaging bodhicitta. And they say that, so again, engaging bodhicitta has the aspiration for enlightenment. So they say a Buddha seeks enlightenment, not for himself, but for others. So he is seeking enlightenment, aspiring for enlightenment for other people, other beings, all sentient beings. So from that point of view, they say it is okay to say that a Buddha has bodhicitta. I don't know, for me, that seems like a nice way around the problem. I just wouldn't feel comfortable to think Buddha doesn't have bodhicitta. But I can see the point. It does sound a bit strange if you define bodhicitta as the aspiration to reach enlightenment. Well, once you're there, do you still need that mind? Okay, so then another, next slide is another way of dividing bodhicitta. And this is into conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. So you may have heard those terms, conventional bodhicitta, ultimate bodhicitta. But in fact, this isn't a real division of bodhicitta. It's just terminological. It's just in name only, because ultimate bodhicitta is not really bodhicitta. It's kind of tricky. They call it, they talk about ultimate bodhicitta, but when you examine what exactly is ultimate bodhicitta, it's not bodhicitta. But I guess we do have examples of that, calling, giving a certain name or term to something, even though it's not that. So we do that in English, and they do it in Tibetan and Sanskrit as well. So what is, okay, so first, let's look at conventional bodhicitta. So conventional bodhicitta is what we've been talking about all along. The aspiration to become a Buddha, to become fully awakened for the benefit of all sentient beings. So that's conventional bodhicitta. And it exists from the Mahayana path of accumulation through Buddha ground. So Buddha ground, that term Buddha ground just means, when you're at the level of a Buddha, when you have the mind of a Buddha. So according to this explanation, then even on the Buddha ground, bodhicitta still exists. It's still there. Yeah, so wishing bodhicitta, engaging bodhicitta, those are both conventional bodhicitta. Now, ultimate bodhicitta, the third bullet point, is this is a definition, so it's a little technical. A Mahayana Arya's main mental knower that directly realizes the emptiness of true existence of enlightenment. Okay, so if we break that down, unpack that, ultimate bodhicitta, saying that it's Mahayana means it's only in the mind of a bodhisattva. Only bodhisattvas have ultimate bodhicitta. And it has to be a Mahayana Arya. That's a person who has directly realized emptiness. So only Mahayana Aryas have ultimate bodhicitta. And it's a main mental knower. It's a primary mind that directly realizes the emptiness of true existence of enlightenment. So it's wisdom, basically. Wisdom directly realizing emptiness. And it mentions specifically the emptiness of enlightenment. And my teacher said the reason that it specifies enlightenment, because actually a direct realization of emptiness realizes the emptiness of all phenomena. Even though to start with, maybe you were just meditating on one object, like your own eye or your mind or your body or whatever. So you was using that object to meditate on and realize emptiness. But then when you have the direct realization of emptiness, when you see emptiness directly, non-conceptually, you are realizing the emptiness of all phenomena, the emptiness of true existence of everything, all phenomena. So this mind doesn't only realize the emptiness of enlightenment, it realizes the emptiness of all phenomena. But the reason it specifies the emptiness of true existence of enlightenment, our teacher says it's because, we're talking about ultimate bodhicitta, the term ultimate bodhicitta. And since we say ultimate bodhicitta or mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta means mind of enlightenment, then you have to say the term ultimate and enlightenment. So it's realizing the ultimate nature, the final mode of existence of enlightenment. Anyway, he explained that's the reason that the definition is given in this way. So that's why ultimate bodhicitta isn't really bodhicitta, because it isn't the wish to become enlightened. It's the wisdom realizing the emptiness of inherent existence of enlightenment, as well as all other phenomena. And the next bullet point says, ultimate bodhicitta is free of the 3 types of dualistic appearances. So the 3 types of dualistic appearances, actually there's more than 3, but the main ones are, one type is appearance of true existence. So for us ordinary beings who haven't realized emptiness, things appear truly existing. We have the appearance of true existence. Whatever we think about, our body, our mind, our eye, other people, other beings, Buddha, enlightenment, all the things we perceive appear truly existing. There's the appearance of true existence. Whereas when a person is in meditation, meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness, there's no appearance of true existence. All appearances of true existence have vanished. And in fact, that's really the first time ever in your whole existence from beginningless time that true existence disappears. So until that point, there's always going to be appearances of true existence. So it must be pretty amazing. So that's one type of dualistic appearance. And another type is the appearances of conventionalities, just conventional things like bodies and tables and chairs and cats and dogs and mountains and trees. So everything that isn't emptiness is a conventionality. So all of those things disappear as well. They don't appear when your mind is in that meditation, directly realizing emptiness. That's another kind of dualistic appearance. And then the third type of dualistic appearance is the appearance of subject and object as different entities. So normally when we have an experience, seeing, hearing, thinking, and so on, there's this sense of a subject over here and an object over there, you know, like two separate things. And in fact, there are two separate things. Subject and object are not the same. But that's our usual experience. But they say that when a person is meditating on emptiness and having the direct realization of emptiness, that sense of a separate subject and object disappears. And they say, the sense of a separate subject over here, looking at emptiness over there, just vanishes, stops. And the only thing that appears is emptiness. There isn't even a sense of a I or mind looking at emptiness, perceiving emptiness, just emptiness itself. So they say it's the sense of an I or a subject kind of flows into emptiness, merges with emptiness in the same way that if you pour a glass of water into a pitcher of water, the glass of water will completely mix with the water in the pitcher and you can no longer distinguish it. They use that analogy to describe this experience of your mind, yourself over here, merging with the object emptiness and just becoming indistinguishable from it. So again, must be an amazing experience to have. So those are three types of dualistic appearances that disappear, don't appear when an Arya is meditating on and having a direct realization of emptiness. So this is another meaning of non-duality. That term non-duality that came up earlier, talking about the more Cheetah Matra point of view of subject and object arising from the same seed in the mind. That's one meaning of non-duality, but this is another meaning of non-duality. Absence of duality, dualistic appearances. So you have to be careful with that term non-duality because it's used in different contexts and has different meanings. So some people just kind of blah, blah, blah about non-duality, but you have to check, what do you mean by non-duality? What kind of non-duality are you talking about? Don't just assume that we all understand that word in the same way. And the last bullet point says, conventional and ultimate bodhicitta represent method and wisdom. So you probably heard this saying about how a bodhisattva needs these two wings, just like a bird needs two wings to fly. A bodhisattva needs two wings of method and wisdom to fly to enlightenment. So conventional bodhicitta is like the method side of the path, and then ultimate bodhicitta is the wisdom side. So bodhisattva needs to cultivate, practice both of those to reach enlightenment. We just have a little bit more, and I would like to finish this topic of bodhicitta this time so we can do something else next time. So in the Ornament, there's also an explanation of, well, it's not really an explanation, it's just a list of 22 kinds of bodhicitta. So I'll just share the next slide. I'm not going to go into all of these, but just for auspiciousness, there are 22 types of bodhicitta. And so Maitreya just mentions their names, no explanation at all. So that shows how important it is to have commentaries. So the names of the 22 bodhicittas are earth, gold, moon, fire, meaning there's earth, bodhicitta that's like the earth, bodhicitta that's like gold, bodhicitta that's like the moon, bodhicitta that's like fire, and so on, like treasure, like a jewel mine, like an ocean, like a vajra, like mountain, like medicine, like a spiritual guide, wish granting gem, sun, song, king, treasury, highway, mount, geyser, pleasant sound, river, and cloud. So those are the 22 types of bodhicitta. And then in the commentaries, it explains a bit more, because these different types of bodhicitta occur at different points of the path. So the first one, the earth-like bodhicitta, is the first bodhicitta that is developed, the first uncontrived bodhicitta. It's called like the earth. And the reason it's called like that is because just as the earth is the basis for growing crops and building buildings, so everything depends on the earth. If we didn't have the earth, we wouldn't be able to have all of these things. So in the same way, this type of bodhicitta, the first kind of bodhicitta a bodhisattva develops, is the basis of all wholesome qualities, the basis of all good things. Yeah. So there are books, sources where you can get more information. Probably one of the volumes, was it volume
I'm not sure if it's volume 5 or 6.
yeah, one of the volumes of the Library of Wisdom and Compassion by Venerable Children and His Holiness the Dalai Lama goes into these. Okay, one last slide. And this isn't really mentioned in Maitreya's text, the Ornament, but it's in the commentaries, and you've probably heard it before. 3 ways that bodhicitta is generated. It's like those who are generating bodhicitta, aspiring for enlightenment, they have 3 different sort of attitudes or ways of thinking how they're going to reach enlightenment and help sentient beings. So the first one is king-like. So that's having the kind of thought like, I will achieve enlightenment first, and then I will lead all sentient beings to that state. So I will be like the leader, like a king, leading all sentient beings to enlightenment. So that's one way of thinking about it. The second one is boatman-like or captain-like. So this is thinking, all sentient beings and I will attain enlightenment together. So it's like you imagine yourself like a captain of a boat, a ship, and all sentient beings are on board, and you're all going to enlightenment together. And the third is like a herdsman, like a shepherd. You know, the way a shepherd relates to their sheep, they kind of drive the sheep ahead of them, and they're in the back, probably to make sure nobody goes astray, nobody gets left behind. So they're kind of herding the sheep in front of them. So this way of thinking is, I will place all sentient beings in the state of enlightenment, and then I will attain enlightenment. So I'll be the last one there. Yeah. So my teacher said, these 3 modes depend on the mental strength of the trainees. Those who have great mental strength, like the sharp faculty bodhisattvas, they are like the third one, the herdsman. I mean, it takes a lot of strength to think that way. I will let everyone else reach enlightenment first, and I'll be the last one there. Yeah. And those with middle strength are like the second one, the boatman, taking all sentient beings along with you to enlightenment. And then those with the least mental strength are like the king, the first one, wanting to be there first. But in reality, they say that even like the third one, the herd's the one who wants to get there last, it won't happen that way. Because you have such strong bodhicitta and compassion and, you know, concern for others, altruism, and so little self-centeredness, that even if you're, you know, kicking and screaming and saying, no, I don't want to reach enlightenment, but it'll happen. That's what they say. That's anecdotal, but it makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so that's as much as I wanted to cover today. So the ornament itself doesn't explain the methods for how to develop bodhicitta. So those are found in the Lamrim and other texts. For example, there's two main methods for developing bodhicitta. One is the sevenfold cause and effect instruction, which, well, before you even start the seven, you meditate on equanimity to overcome the tendency to relegate beings to these three positions of friend, enemy, stranger. Try to even out your feelings towards others. So you stop discriminating and having biased attitudes towards them. And then the actual 7 points start with thinking of all sentient beings as mother. They've all been my mother in past lives. And then second is thinking of their kindness. When they were my mother, what did they do for me? They brought me into the world and they cared for me when I was small and vulnerable and so on and so forth, just like our mother of this life, or just like good mothers everywhere. And so that is to engender a strong sense of affection. Like if we really appreciate what our mother does for us in this life, we feel so much affection for her and we're ready to help her. We put everything aside and jump to help her when she needs help. So if everyone has played that role in our mother, then we can generate very strong affection for others. And then we go on to think about how to repay their kindness, and we can help them now in this life, but really helping them is by helping them get out of samsara, helping them achieve nirvana and enlightenment. And then we go on to meditate on love, a special kind of love, wishing sentient beings to be happy, to have happiness, all the different kinds of happiness up to the highest happiness of enlightenment. And then compassion, wishing them to be free of suffering, all the different kinds of suffering. So by meditating on all these points again and again and again over a long period of time, then you finally get to the point of having what's called sometimes it's called universal responsibility, or the extraordinary wish, or the special thought. And there's different ways of translating that. So this is where you get to the point where you decide to take on that responsibility of helping sentient beings have happiness and freedom from suffering. And then that leads to bodhicitta. So realizing that how to help sentient beings, the best way to help them, the only way to really help them is by becoming a Buddha yourself. So then you make that your goal. Set your sights on enlightenment with this sense of strong love and compassion. So those are the main points of that method for developing bodhicitta. So you're probably all familiar with them, but yeah, we need to meditate on these points again and again in order to generate this attitude of bodhicitta. And the other method, I'll mention it next week, or maybe we could do a little bit of meditation. We didn't really have time tonight. I was talking too much. So next week we can start with some meditation. So we have a few minutes left. If anyone has a question you'd like to ask. Yes.
Does wishing and engaging bodhicitta only apply to spontaneous bodhicitta, or could contrived also be divided?
They don't I don't think they use those terms. Yeah, I think wishing bodhicitta, engaging bodhicitta, those terms are only applied to actual uncontrived bodhicitta.
So how would you describe an ordinary being who has this contrived wish and engages in like generosity?
Of course, yeah. I mean, before we become bodhisattvas, before we have real uncontrived bodhicitta, we do need to be practicing generosity and ethics and so on and so forth. And we try our best to have the bodhicitta motivation for doing these practices, but it's not yet the real thing. You know, it's like we're maybe dress rehearsal or something. We're rehearsing. But yeah, at our level, at my level anyway, yeah, I just try to have the bodhicitta motivation and try to practice giving and ethics to the best of my ability. And of course, it's valuable and beneficial. And it's, you know, creating the causes to eventually have genuine bodhicitta and be on the bodhisattva's path and reach enlightenment. But yeah, usually in the text, when they talk about bodhicitta, it is the uncontrived form. Because that's when you really are, like when they talk about accumulating merit for enlightenment, the 3 countless great eons of merit that a bodhisattva on the sutra path needs to cultivate, that actually starts from the path of accumulation. So whatever merit we're creating now, I mean, of course it is, it is, you know, helping us get to enlightenment, but it's not officially part of the accumulation of merit until we have genuine uncontrived bodhicitta. I hope this doesn't sound discouraging. That's how it is.
Just long.
Anyone from the online students? Well, then I guess we can finish. So we'll dedicate the merit, the positive energy of spending this time together, learning more about the Bodhisattva's practices and deeds, and hopefully feeling very inspired to learn more, but to practice more. So that one day we can actually be bodhisattvas, engaging in bodhisattva deeds and actually making our way to enlightenment. So we definitely created merit, positive energy, by spending this time together looking at these topics. And the best thing we can do with our merit is to share it with others, all living beings. They've all been our kind mothers. We've received kindness and help, gifts from every single living being. And so let's generate the strong wish to repay their kindness, benefit them in return. And this is one way we can do that, by sharing our merit, our positive energy with them. Let's wish that the merit we've accumulated here tonight will benefit all sentient beings, help them all to generate in their own minds these positive thoughts, these positive attitudes of love and compassion and wisdom, and eventually bodhicitta, so that we can all progress together on the path and ultimately reach full enlightenment, Buddhahood. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel Bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-fulfilling, wish-granting jewel, the source of every benefit and happiness in the world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three sublime ones, the Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. We can also mentally dedicate to the long lives of all spiritual masters. So each of us may have other spiritual masters that we've learned from and that we value, regard as precious, and want them to live a long time. And then spiritual masters of other people and other beings. So let's dedicate that all teachers who are teaching the genuine teachings of the path to enlightenment, may they all live long, healthy lives, and may all their wishes and prayers be fulfilled. Okay, thank you.